Hello everyone, I'm Deborah Garlick from Henpicked.net and I'm delighted to welcome Jackie Lynch to today's Lunch and Learn. Hi Jackie. Now the focus of this session today is lockdown, festive season, menopause and New Year's diets. And the reason for that, I don't know if you're anything like us at Henpicked.net, we got together between Christmas and New Year and through Jackie a bit of a curveball really, because we've all been inside more, closures of gyms. If you're like me, my diet, my nutrition, my healthy eating seems to be spiraling out of control. And personally, I did a best ever this Christmas with 5 very large boxes of chocolates. So the curveball that we threw to Jackie was, we want to start the new year off in the right way, get our eating habits back on track. But whatever you do, Jackie, do not make me feel deprived. Jackie, how do you feel about that challenge? Do you think that's possible?
I do. I think it's absolutely possible. And I think that that feeling of deprivation is one of the reasons why so many diets don't work. Because, we can all starve ourselves for a couple of weeks, but, it doesn't last. It's not sustainable. And I think that now more than ever, particularly with the latest announcement where we're all feeling probably a little bit low, a little bit down, there is that sense of wanting to find a little bit of comfort. And of course, a lot of people turn to food for comfort. So what we'll be looking at today, I've come up with 3 ideas, 3 suggestions. You can do all 3, you can do one of the 3, but whichever one you choose, they will actually help you feel full, which is really important if you want to be looking at sustainable weight management, but also support your health in different ways and hopefully just have you feeling positive about self-care rather than feeling as if, oh, it's January and I'm having a grim time.
We had a chat about that yesterday, didn't we? This self-care thing. It's so important, as you say. Yesterday we heard from Boris Johnson that we're in a bigger lockdown than ever before and the gyms are closed again. So self-care is so important at this time, isn't it?
Oh, it's incredibly important. And I think that, we're in it for the long haul now. And it's a tougher one, I think, than last time around, partly because we know what to expect and we know how tough it can get, but also because, it's January, the days are shorter, not so much time to be spending out sitting in the garden during the wonderful heat wave that we had in the last lockdown. So I think really digging deep and looking at how you can look after yourself is crucial. And women generally aren't so good at that. They're so busy looking after everybody else. But let's face it, in most cases, you are the heart of the household, the heart of your community. And if you collapse, everything else is going to collapse. So even if you're not naturally given to self-care, do it for everyone else, because if you're okay, then they will be.
And they can join in on this, can't they? And one of the big questions that we often get is my weight gain entirely due to menopause?
Well, it's nice and easy to blame the poor old menopause, isn't it? And to be fair, there is a hormonal aspect to weight management in midlife because the body is encouraging that storage of fat because fat cells actually contain estrogen. But by and large, it tends to be things around that. For example, many women experience issues around a loss of body confidence, and that can then stop them doing the same level of exercise they were doing before if they don't want to be hanging out in the gym. Other women may experience issues around pelvic floor, urinary stress incontinence, that little bit of wee when you jump or do a high impact exercise or even laugh or sneeze. And again, that might start to put you off. So I think there are factors around midlife that can start to affect you. But also, quite honestly, I think this past year where we've all been more sedentary, because even if you have a commute where you go on a train, you're still sort of moving, you're moving, getting on and off the train, you're moving around the office, you're doing all these things. And if you live in a small flat or a small house, then you won't be getting that same level of movement. So that could be piling on as well. So I think there are multiple factors that can come into it when it comes to weight management.
Thank you, Jackie. And before we jump into those top tips and a challenge, we do have Sharon and Sally behind the scenes. So Do keep your questions coming because we've got time for Q&A at the end. But with that, Jackie, I'm going to jump straight into the number one of your top, or the first one of your top 3 tips, and then the challenge. We'll write all of this up and make sure that this is available afterwards so that everybody can recap. If you're like me, I had to go away with our notes afterwards and sort of write out my shopping list and that sort of thing. But do keep your questions coming and do expect some notes on the way. So over to you then, Jackie. The first of the top 3 top tips, time restricted approach. What does that mean?
Okay, so I've included this one because I think that many of you have probably tried multiple different diets over the years. Some of you may have been yo-yo dieters. And of course, if that's the case, then your metabolism simply won't know whether it's coming or going. And once your metabolism starts to slow down, you can get to the point where you're eating very little and still not able to lose weight. So I wanted to look at something that was going to be A, sustainable, and B, reassure your metabolism that actually you are in good shape and that it can trust you to feed yourself regularly, so that you don't go into what I often describe as camel mode, whereby the body's holding on to stuff because it sort of thinks you're in some kind of famine. So time restricted eating can come in different guises. So you've probably all heard of, or perhaps even tried, the 5-2 diet and other forms of intermittent fasting. I'm not a massive fan of that one. I think particularly for women who've been yo-yo dieting over the years, I don't think it's particularly helpful for the metabolism. So the one I often recommend to my clients is the 16-8. And this is where essentially you eat within an 8-hour window and you fast for the 16 hours. And because a good part of that you're actually asleep, you won't really notice what you're doing. Now, I think for many of us over Christmas, it's probably turned into an 8-16, where you can eat for 16 hours and fasting for 8. So we need to sort of look at moving that around. Now, one of the reasons I particularly like this is that it allows you to eat a good, balanced, healthy diet within that 8-hour window. So you're not doing weird stuff. You're not eliminating food groups and going on to some kind of radical regime, which right now, frankly, I'm sure you won't be in the mood for. What you're simply doing is planning to eat within that window. So, for example, you would eat breakfast at 10:30 and make sure you'd finished your evening meal by 6:30, for example. And then around that, you could drink water, you could have herbal teas, and hopefully be sleeping lots so that you're not actually feeling that you're depriving yourself. Now, there's lots of great benefits to this. First of all, it's proven to be incredibly effective for weight management. And part of the reason for that is that it allows the body to move into repair mode rather than growth mode. If you're continually feeding yourself, then you will be in growth mode and your hormones will be encouraging you to grow. And I mean, like it or not, most of us probably don't need to be growing right now. It supports health in other ways as well, because it really helps with the digestion. So anyone who's struggling with bloating or IBS type symptoms will often find that having that longer window where the body can digest and restore itself can really help. And one of the other great things about it, of course, is that because you're eating within that shorter window, you tend to feel fuller. You might end up finding you're generally not eating as much because you're not quite ready for the next meal. So it's actually a really great way of dieting without feeling that you're on a diet, because you can still have that healthy breakfast, you can still have that little something in the middle of the day, and then your proper balanced evening meal. So try that. That's one thing you could try. The second thing worth trying is managing your portions. Now, that's really important whether or not you're doing the time restricted approach. First of all, what am I talking about there? So I think the simplest way I want to describe it is fist. So if you make a fist, we've all got a different size fist, which is pretty good because then it relates to us and our build. That's quite a good way of managing your portions. Most of us are eating more than we should. So what I want you to be thinking about going forward is just looking at how much is on your plate. Now, right now, we're eating more because we've probably eaten more over Christmas, so our stomachs have expanded and we're used to having more. So we need to get the body used to having a little bit less. But we also have to remember that now lockdown's got properly strict again. You're not going to be moving as much. You probably weren't moving that much in sort of the previous iterations of lockdown. So you're not going to need such large levels of carbohydrate, the chances are. So first of all, thinking about breakfast, if you're having cereal, muesli, porridge, weigh it out, because actually a portion is 30 grams. And any of you who've ever weighed 30 grams of cereal will know that it's actually not very much at all. So if you're filling your bowl up, you're probably having double that. So straight away, that's a quick win you can have. You're not removing your breakfast, you're simply managing the portion that you require around breakfast time. And then have a look at your plates for lunch and dinner. So a fist size of protein. Why do we need protein? Well, we need protein because, first of all, it's all about growth and repair, but it balances blood sugar. It manages our sugar cravings because it slows down the release of carbohydrate in the body, keeping you fuller for longer. So protein is things like meat, fish, eggs, lentils, chickpeas, beans, quinoa, hummus, nuts, seeds. They're all great sources of protein. So on your plate, one fistful of protein. If you're having starch, and probably most of us don't need it at both main meals, but it would be only a fistful again, not half the plate. And ideally, it's going to be whole grain starch, so brown bread, brown rice, brown pasta. You're getting that fiber in that, again, will balance the blood sugar, stop the crashes, which are the things that lead to all those sugar cravings. And then half the plate, two fistfuls of vegetables, ideally one fist of leafy greens and one fist of other vegetables. And if you're not having starch with your evening meal, which is probably a good shout right now because we're not going to be doing that much exercise and movement in the evening, then 3 fistfuls of veg and 1 fist of protein is the way to go. Start to think about that, making up your plate. And then if you're not snacking between meals and you're following that 16-8, you're actually going to be getting lots of food. You're going to be feeling comfortable and full. And if we're full, we're happy. And it will make life a lot easier.
Thank you very much, Jackie. And, with that, we'll come back to some of the things that we've talked about before, keto, etc. But that is a balanced diet, whether you're a vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, or a carnivore, that you can follow the different portion sizes. And this is where it comes to the challenge, the fruit and veg challenge that you had me going with last week around what we should be eating.
Yeah, now this is a bit of fun. It's something I like to do once a year. I actually ran one back in November during the lockdown light that we had going on there. So it's very simple. All you're looking at is 40 different fruit and vegetables in 7 days. And yes, it's totally possible because there are loads of them. I like to add a few guidelines to that. Ideally skew towards vegetables so that you're aiming for a maximum of 2 fruit a day and the rest is vegetables. A portion, as I've mentioned, is about a fist size, apart from obvious things like garlic or chili where you'd normally do a smaller portion. It's fine to eat something twice, but it won't count to the tally. And it's not a detox. So I'm not suggesting that you only eat fruit and vegetables for the next 7 days. That's not the point. The point is that it's underpinning that balanced diet I talked about with your combination of your protein and your fibers. And like it or not, starchy things like the potatoes, the pulses don't count for the tally. Now, it's great for a number of reasons. First of all, we're putting stuff in and not taking stuff out, which I think at this time of year is just what we need. I think we're all fed up of being told you can't have X, Y, Z. The great thing about eating this much vegetables in particular during the day is that it's full of fiber, so it's going to fill you up. So again, you're going to be feeling really well satisfied between meals. So you won't be looking around for the biscuits or the end of that chocolate box. Why else is it great? Well, it's going to support your digestion, which is really important. But right now, given everything that's going on, all these fruit and vegetables packed with antioxidants, really going to support and underpin your immune system, because that's actually incredibly important right now. We need to be feeling as strong and robust as we can. So it's a great bit of fun, and one of the things I particularly like about it is that it mixes things up a bit. I think we all get into a bit of a rut. So what I'd say is that, for example, spinach, broccoli, and tomatoes are my go-to vegetables, and they're brilliant and really healthy. But whenever I do this challenge, it makes me realize how often I'm eating just those. So what this then makes me do is look at, just mixing it up a bit, trying new recipes, and expanding my repertoire, because the broader range of foods you can get in a diet, the healthier it's going to be for you. So it's more of a challenge than a weight management thing. But my experience is that when people are doing this, because they're so busy getting all the vegetables in, it doesn't leave room for the other stuff that is going to cause problems and lead to weight gain. So there you are.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Now on the screen, I've actually put the handout that you very kindly did for us, and I was actually working out my own shopping list, because when you first told me about this, I said, you've got to be kidding me. But when I looked at my dinner last night, I'd already achieved 5 just in that one meal. I had lettuce and tomato, avocado salad, corn on the cob, probably a little bit too much butter on there, and a bit of coleslaw. So I thought, well, actually, I can do that. So when you look and you count up, there's 28 fruit on there. There's 41 vegetables. As you say, my go-to would be pretty much the same ones all the time. So it does encourage you to look across for something a little bit different as well, doesn't it? So planning your meals in that sort of way. So, it's only just over the 5 a day, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, what I tend to find when I do it is that the first few days I'm managing 7 or 8 a day quite easily, and then I'm starting to run out of vegetables. And of course, because I've got other vegetables there as well, I end up eating more. For example, I can't have a salad without tomatoes, so I'm still eating my tomatoes. I'm just putting more and other different vegetables on top to make sure I get to my tally.
Now, you did this earlier on this year, and I appreciate what you're saying about waste management. And I am really so, if they decide to bring us out of lockdown and ask us all to put our structured work suits on, I'm not really sure how mine might feel at the minute. But, so you can relax into it a little bit more, can't you? And be kinder to yourself, but have a little bit of fun with this and do yourself some good in the process.
Absolutely. I think it's all about trying to be positive right now and doing things that seem like a bit of a fun challenge, rather than, oh, here we go, it's January and I'm going to strip all these foods out of my diet like I do every January. And then come February, I'm back to my old habits. The nice thing about this is I'm not suggesting you do the 40 fruit and veg challenge for weeks and weeks. 1 week's quite enough. The nice thing about it is that it just wakes you up a bit, introduces you to some new recipes, and sometimes vegetables you've never really tried before. And so you're broadening your repertoire, and then you get the sort of ongoing benefits from it.
Absolutely. And the big question for me was, what is gin made of, and is it on the list? But it's not, is it? But nevertheless, this once I've got my head around it, I didn't go head first into the cheesy Wotsits. This is something that's doable. And when you did it before, you said it's not weight loss, but at the same time, it's rebalancing your body, getting you accustomed to better lifestyle choices. Yeah. And when you did it before, you said that you did lose some weight in the...
Oh, I always lose a couple of pounds whenever I do this, simply because I'm so busy filling myself with vegetables. As I said, there just isn't room for, oh, I'll just nibble a bit of cheese, or, oh, I'll just have that biscuit, or whatever might be, your little treat of choice. One of the nice things about it as well is that it is a bit of a reset. So I ran it at the beginning of the November lockdown, and it was a good way of sort of getting my brain and my clients' brains into thinking, okay, let's just be a bit healthier about things. So you might want to just start out with this over the next week or so. It's all in the planning though. Make sure you've made a bit of a plan before you start, otherwise you might get discouraged. But it's great fun. And I think one of the questions that came up, I've seen it's come up in the chat here, and I can see, and it came up before, is, yes, but what about eating seasonally? And this is where I would direct you towards the frozen food section. And I think we often have a bit of a feeling that if it's not fresh, then it's not going to be healthy. But actually, an awful lot of the frozen vegetables are absolutely outstanding because they've been frozen within an hour of being harvested. And what that means is that the bioavailability of the minerals and vitamins is often much greater than something that's been picked a long way away and then traveled. And as the longer something's in storage, down comes that vitamin and mineral content. So, if you've picked it off the tree in your garden, it's going to be much better than if it's come from the other side of the world. And that's the advantage of the frozen stuff. So don't feel that you can't mix it up a bit. Go and have a look at the frozen food section. on your online supermarket, because that's how we've got to do it right now. Or if you're lucky enough to have a farm shop or a farmer's market near you, then there's loads of stuff. Again, probably certain leaves that you can get, things like winter purslane, so you can get winter green leaves, for example, which are absolutely great. So I think it's a good way of helping you reset and challenge yourself, but don't discount frozen stuff, because actually it's pretty good.
And soups and smoothies?
Well, they're a really cunning way of bumping up your tally. If you suddenly get to day 4 and think, oh, I can't face another salad or another 6 veg on my plate, then a juice, a smoothie or a soup is a great way of chucking things in. For example, I'm not a fan of celery, and I know it's really good for you, but I shove it in a juice with some other things, can't taste it at all, and then I'm getting the benefits of my celery. So, and at the same time 3 or 4 other different, fruit or veg. So yeah, I'd absolutely go for that. It helps to, just helps you bump up your challenge.
Okay, so that's the handout. Everybody can have it. I do think it's something you can share with your family, and get everybody involved in. And, whether we're all going to send you photographs via social media, Jackie, and say, rate my plate, is another thing. I'm sure we'd all, if you contact us in, I'm sure we'll give you an opinion.
Absolutely, yes. I'm at Well UK, and do that. That would be great. And what I would also say is, for heaven's sake, don't beat yourself up if you only get to 32 or 26, because you'll still have broadened your range. It will still have been a really positive exercise. So, 40 is my random number, which is a bit of a challenge, but, not insurmountable. Hey, if you can get to 30, that would be brilliant. So don't start sort of going all alpha on yourself and thinking, oh, I haven't done what I should have done, because whatever you do will be brilliant.
Okay, so just to recap then, that was tip number 1 was the time restricted approach, manage your portions and look at your fist, and the fruit and veg challenge. And probably, as you said to me yesterday, when I said, what about hydration? And you said, always hydrate.
Yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's Nutrition 101.
Thank you very much, Jackie. So I'll see if my colleague, whether that's Sharon or Sally, wants to come on screen and ask you any questions. Hi, Sharon.
Oh, hi. Thanks very much indeed, Jackie. Really, really interesting to hear about that in terms of keeping us fuller for longer. It's quite interesting, isn't it, that if we do fill ourselves with fibre, that we're not then reaching for the things that aren't particularly nutritious for us. And I guess that there's a couple of questions that I know that you guys have already answered, but there's another one as well that came in. Just some advice really in terms of, if someone's going on to HRT, what particular nutritional advice would you give? I think I probably know the answer to this, but it would be great to hear what your thoughts are with regards to that.
Well, the thing about HRT is that it can be a brilliant thing for you, but it's going to work a lot better if you give it the tools, and those tools to make sure you're having a balanced diet. So for me, it's really very much all about blood sugar balance, because one of the big issues with our hormones is that they can get all out of balance. The more stressed we are, the more we're producing adrenaline and cortisol, the more our sex hormones, the balance of our hormones, whether we're ingesting them, having them through patches, or whether our adrenal glands are producing them post-menopause, wherever they're coming from, they're not going to be supported if you're stressed, because the cortisol, the adrenaline, is going to block that. And every time your blood sugar crashes, your body's producing more cortisol, more adrenaline. Now, we're already in this massive stressful situation of lockdown 3 or 4 or whatever it is now. And so just getting that balance right, having that protein, that fiber with every meal and snack, keeps the blood sugar balance, stops it crashing, stops the stress hormones, which are the things that drive your sugar cravings, and unbalance your sex hormones, which we just don't need right now. So it's really about getting those basics right. So I'd advise that person to be looking at, the fists that I've talked about. Get that protein, that fiber, and then the 2 vegetables, and you won't go far wrong.
And I think, with any choice that we make with regards to managing our symptoms, eating well is great for anyone, isn't it? This isn't, you know, just for menopause. This is for us in midlife, whether we're male or female. You know, it doesn't make any difference in terms of, you know, our gender, does it, at all? You know,
No,
it's
absolutely.
very much about our long-term well-being if we eat well.
Yeah, you're dead right. Blood sugar balance works for the whole family. So it's not as if you suddenly got to squirrel yourself away and do some weird diet while the rest of the family are doing their thing. If you apply those principles to the family meals, they're all going to benefit. They'll all have, you know, sustained energy, better sleep, better digestion, manage their weight if that's a concern. So it really is all round great for everyone.
Jackie, can I ask you one of the questions? Thank you for that. A question I had was before around, do you mean no carbs all week? Are we all right to eat carbs? I'm conscious of the keto and all of that. So what about carbs? Is there a fist for that?
Yes, when I talked about starch or fiber, if you think about my 4 fists, there was the fist for protein, the fist for starch, and the 2 fists for vegetables. Now, starch is starchy carbohydrate. You know, it's the bread, the pasta, the rice, the potatoes, that kind of thing. But fruit and vegetables are carbohydrate too, and we mustn't forget that. And we do need carbohydrate because it's the body's primary source of energy. So I wouldn't be suggesting that you rule out all starchy carb. I'd probably be inclined to say right now, have it at lunchtime rather than in the evening meal, because you haven't got much of a hope of burning it off, for want of a better term, while you're sleeping overnight. So, and if you're having that small portion, that fist size, it's going to be much more appropriate, because very often we fill the plate with rice or pasta, and we just don't need that much, unless anybody who's watching has got, you know, a particularly active job. And I think, for example, of a nurse, I worked with a nurse a couple of years ago in my clinic, and I realized that I simply wasn't suggesting enough starch for her. She was getting very tired because she was running around the wards. So if you've got a very physical job like that, then you will be needing more starchy carbohydrate. If you're just exercising an hour a day, then the starch at lunchtime is still ample. You know, unless you're doing intense training at an elite level, most of us don't need vast amounts of starch, particularly right now when we're sort of just sitting here, not allowed to go out and do much more than an hour a day anyway.
Exactly. And do you recommend 3 hours? 3 meals in the 8-hour window?
Yeah, that's a great question. Probably not. Well, it depends on the size of your meal. I mean, when I do it, I tend to find that because I'm really quite hungry by breakfast time, 10:30ish or whenever I'm doing it, then I have you know, quite a good breakfast. And then what I tend to find is all I really need is about 2 o'clock. I'll have maybe some hummus and carrot sticks. So it's a bit more of a snack. And then I'm ready for my evening meals about 6:30, because for the most part, you'll find that you're not hungry enough for a full meal, although it will depend on you know, the portions at the previous meal. So that's, oh, I see someone said the 6-hour eating window. It's definitely an 8-hour eating window, everyone, not 6-hour. Yeah, I mean, it will depend. If you eat like a bird and you only have sort of, you know, tiny breakfast, tiny lunch anyway, then probably, yes, 3 meals will be fine. So you need to sort of be honest with yourself about, you know, are you a hearty eater already, and do you really need 3 full meals in that? And try and listen to your body. I think the smart thing here is to chew your food properly, because if you chew your food properly and take time to eat slowly and mindfully, it will allow the satiety response to kick in, which tells you when you're full. You might suddenly find, you know what, I really don't actually need any more. A bit like that time back in the day, remember when we used to order dessert at restaurants? Remember those? And if the waiter takes too long to come back and take the order, you've often gone off the idea. That's because your body's caught up and satiety's kicked in. If they're really quick and efficient, you've ordered the chocolate mousse before you know it, and then you've ended up eating it. So slowing down how you're eating, challenge yourself to be the last to finish rather than the first to finish if you're eating with other people.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Last question. Well, actually, lots of comments about people feeling excited about eating more fruit and veg, which is just a great outcome. And thank you to Karen saying that frozen fruit has been a revelation for her. So that's an extra top tip to add in. I think we can all do that. And I think that you did, well, I strongly believe that you achieved your objective of giving us something that we can do to improve a healthy lifestyle. And of course, that helps with the menopause, whether you're taking HRT or not, or if you're in perimenopause or post-menopause. All of these are skills for life. So thank you very, very much. And if you haven't treated yourself yet, Jackie's book, I've just realised it's sitting behind me. There you go. The Happy Menopause is a real treat, and there's lots of things. There's things about supplements, nutrition, different swaps in there as well. So treat yourself to that alongside the Henpicked book. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you to all of you who joined us today, and special thanks to Jackie. A treat as always. Love your practical advice, and yes, I will be sharing my plate with you and letting you know how I get on, but actually 40 seems appropriate. So for everybody that's on this session today, we will write up the notes for this. We will make sure that you've got a copy of that handout. We'll let you know when the next lunch and learn is. So I hope you've enjoyed this little bite size, and Happy New Year to you from Henpicked. Thank you very much.